are beginning to rob us of this election.
All right, thank you for staying with us. So now we'll be engaging our guest, Professor Udenta, the founding National Secretary of Alliance for Democracy. He is also a distinguished fellow of Abuja School of Social and Political Thoughts. Prof, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to be with you this morning.
All right, a lot of controversies trailing the alleged lack of transparency in the election, particularly regarding the uploading of results onto the IREV portal. Could you react to this, please?
Let me first take a step back and then go back to the behavior of our president, commander-in-chief, on election day. It's a matter not fully litigated by most pundits, operatives, even political party leaders and maybe members of campaign councils of the various political parties. I respect the institution of the presidency, and I respect the office of the president, and I respect occupiers of that office. I try in my mind, as a Democrat and as a statesman, as somebody who went to detention several times for this democracy, I'm prepared to fight for its endurance, to separate the person of the president and his conduct in office. On election day, Mr. President waved his voter's card and told the whole world and the whole nation who he voted for. Apart from being in utter violation of the Electoral Act, it signaled something, not maybe intended by him. His handlers, his media person, Shehu Garuba, talked about the president under pressure because of social media to disclose who he voted for. Presidential conducts, which are very consequential, are now rooted on social media pressure. Because in signaling who you voted for, he may be doing it innocently. INEC, the security agencies, the military, the police may not see it that way. It may be a call to order. This is what the president wants. Anyhow you deliver it, the president will be comfortable with you. Are you seeing that, the implication of that? So we don't know whether the mess in INEC today is a consequence of that signaling. We don't know whether the police behavior and the military behavior in Lagos, in Port Harcourt, and so on may be a consequence of that display. That may not be the intent of the president to corrupt the system, because he said, I will work to ensure that my successor upholds my policies, my legacies, and so on. But I will ensure the elections are free, fair, credible, and transparent. That was compromised. Because apart from millions of people being impacted by that decision, it could well have much more dangerously impacted on the behavior of the handlers of the electoral apparatus. So maybe the uploading of these results and not uploading, the discarding of beavers and still going ahead to another, may be a consequence of signaling. I want to put it out there, very important, an issue. So that next time our president, not just Muhammad Buhari, should understand the enormity of the powers they have. The bully pulpit, what they call the bully pulpit, they command, and the rationale that people can derive from the action. Secondly, processes are very important. Procedures are very important. Rule of law, very important. And constitutional governance, very important. People say the process is the key. The outcome is not very important. Who becomes president? Atiku Abubakar, Peter Obi, Bola Tinubu, or whatever. It's not even key. As impactful as a presidency is, what is important is how do you arrive there? INEC has an electoral act that will give you a broad spectrum of what to do and what not to do. From that electoral act, you drive what is called practice direction and guidelines. This is to operationalize the electoral act. INEC will transmit result via beavers, and beavers is bimodal, two methods of identification, biometric or visual. So that a fingerprint is recognized or a face is recognized. If he fails to do so in the ab initio, in the first instance, and for a lot of people within the same PU, election day is suspended. In the past, there's something they call incident report. It didn't happen well. The carrier didn't function well in 2015 or 2019. So you can now have a report to say, this is what happened, then you go ahead and accredit the voter. But with beavers, it can't do that. If you do not use the beavers, it cannot generate a result from any other place.
All right, you did say, I think recently, some time ago, that democracy is a complex phenomenon and it has its ups and downs. You also said that the introduction of the BVAS and the electronic transmission of results are progressive provisions in the Electoral Act. A lot of people would seem to want to argue with this vice because one would say, was it the total failure of the BVAS entirely or the total lack of the political will of INEC to look at that BVAS as an instructive instrument to guide Nigeria to a free and fair election?
The first point I made, which people may think is tangential to this conversation, about the power of the presidency and signaling. May we have a role to play. So political will may be much more consequential as a causative element in the drama, the messy drama, about the rupturing of our democracy that we have seen before our very eyes. If you have a practice direction by INEC and repeated statements by INEC chairman and spokespersons, one mode of transmission of result that is clear to everybody, not a first step. BVAS recognizes you as a voter. The process is unleashed. The result is transmitted. So multiple transmissions of result from the PIUs across the country to the ward, to the LG, to the state, to the national, in a sequential order. And their backbone must be robust and takes it over time. And INEC has showed that with Anambra off-season election, the Ekiti off-season election, and the Osun off-season election, that INEC was ready for this robust application of technology. Two, if you must use the iPortal and all the people involved as critical stakeholders, the political parties and the agents must see you do it. And if you do it, they must see it in full display. That's an assurance INEC gave. It's like a match. If you decide to use a blend of a referee and a VAR, that's fine. It can't come somewhere after the match and say, oh no, I thought I'm going to use a VAR method, I can't use it anymore. It can't do so. So if you talk about the first step way now, from the PIU, from the PU, from the ward to the LG, to the state, that's the first step. And all with paper trail. Then we're back to the electoral practice of decades gone. The essence of technology is completely wiped out, obliterated. And why process is key is that INEC must suspend this sham, collation going on. And let Nigerians take a breather that whatever you are going to finally deposit at the outcome must enjoy the confidence of Nigerians, the confidence of Africans, the confidence of the global community. So far, it has not met that threshold. I've read a lot of reports, initial reports and reactions from major players in the international scene. The IRI and NDI that invested heavily since 1998 in building out the infrastructure for democracy, they have condemned the process. It has not met international threshold of acceptability. The EU that has been heavily involved with funding, almost rivaling the federal government with funding, and they can say this is not the kind of process we anticipated. And they gave us false information because INEC apparently technically wasn't ready for this. But more directly to the issues you raised, is it a compromised technical system and method or the absence of political will? I listened carefully to your last contributors who said, what is the rush to judgment? You announced to the people, we are having technical challenges. It will take 4 or 5 days to sort these challenges out. As we are so doing, let the political parties and the agents and the rest and their people be guided appropriately. Everything we are doing is in the open and transparently done. He didn't do so.
Now, Prof, everyone is complaining. Abdulsalami Abubakar has written a letter. Olusegun Obasanjo, former president, had also talked about it. Even the international observers have also, talked about some of these issues you're talking about. But the worry for many Nigerians is, even if you suspend this collation now, and then you go back to maybe some of the places where they had issues, because you can't say everywhere there was issue in everywhere. There were some places where elections held and people didn't complain and they were happy with the outcome at the PU level. So if you now halt this, but the bottom line and the question people are asking is that the results were not uploaded from the PU. So would that now mean going back to take the whole elections all over again so that you can now take that process of the Electoral Act, we say you must upload from the polling station? That's one leg of the question. The second one would be that what if now the results are now uploaded. I was going through the iRev and I saw that some of the results are already being uploaded. What if now the results are now uploaded and then the results tally with what is being presented at the National Collation Center now? Would that douse the tension already built up?
Oh, sure. Let me tell you, the way this thing functions is this. INEC is not a power unto itself. It has a enormity of powers, no doubt. But INEC works in conjunction with critical stakeholders. Those stakeholders, one, the political parties and the candidates. Happily for us, we don't have independent candidates in Nigeria, so we have all the candidates represented through political parties. And the major political parties, the four of them we can now see having one election here and there. There are not too many. INEC must sit down in conference with them and in conference with other, maybe international observers, so that these issues you raise must be completely tabled out. Out of the 176 plus thousand PUs where elections were conducted, do we have 150,000 free of blemishes in terms of the availability and the utilization of the beavers, in terms of the way the process was conducted, in terms of lack of violence and so on and so forth? There must be a consensus on that matter. It is no longer an INEC business anymore. It's gone outside the control of INEC because democracy is threatened. It's in danger. If the presidential election is stalled and outcome is up in the air, lacking credibility and lacking fairness and justice, then nobody will accept it. Two, if you have issues with certain areas elections were not conducted properly, you cancel the election there. That's what the law says. And decide on alternative date when you're going to do a rerun of that election. If it takes you time to transmit the result, upload the result the way it ought to be done, take the time in a timely fashion and transmit the result with the full glare of the political parties and their agents, of the Nigerian public and the international community. In deciding to rush to announce results, in the same ancient way we used to do our electoral methods, by reading scrap of papers handed here and there, which you can't even verify its authenticity, and then telling people that you can go to court and litigate. That's not the way it's going to happen this time around. The process will determine the outcome. If you have an outcome that is not based on the process-led, in situation where you have the beavers recognizing people's fakes or, a fingerprint, where you have this result uploaded from the PU into the server, ultimately with everybody understanding it has been uploaded. If you don't do that, then you have no election. In areas where you didn't comply with this, you must rerun the election. If you did it fairly well in everywhere, but you've not uploaded the result, you must upload the results. You must pause the process and upload the result for people to see that this elections were transparently done.
All right, Prof. In the paragraph 3 of the letter by Abdulsalami, he states, and I quote him, he said, Nigerians must be reminded that the world has invested a lot of goodwill towards these elections. We have taken note of the dissatisfaction among voters who braved all harsh weather elements to perform their civic duties. And citizens deserve to be rewarded by a process that ensures that their votes truly count. Now, you also hear a statement in our interview from the Nigerian Labour Congress chairman who said that they are ready to mobilize and occupy the Collation Center. That is coming from the general populace. But then there's a sense that our institutions are not only compassionate, but have a sense of impunity to citizens' demand. What can be the consequence of this? Okay,
the consequence of this is a gradual or even accelerated implosion of the infrastructure of democratic governance. This system was put carefully, in a delicate fashion, by proud men and women of Nigerian stock, fighting bravely against all odds to get the military out of the way and institutionalize the practice of civil governance in order to deepen civil liberties and constitutional order. It's under threat. Not by the military anymore, that has now aligned itself in a new transformational format to aid the sustenance of democratic governance. It is not by the police, it is part of the exercise of them. It is now within the civil setup, the INEC as an institution, designed by law to govern, a method in which everybody aligns to democratic practice, that what you've done is okay by us, even though I'm pained not to have won, but the process was good. If you fail to observe that process because of impunity and tell people, I will announce my result and take a rush to judgment, people will take laws in their hands. If you make, as the saying, ancient saying goes, peaceful change impossible, it may leave people with no choice than to seek for self-help. In seeking for self-help, they can blow it all up. And when institutions like the NLC is speaking, they're talking about millions of Nigerians actively mobilized. When you see people like President Obasanjo speaking, he's speaking with the depth of experience of over 50-something years of being in the public glare. Even Salami, whose own words were more measured, is alarmed by what INEC is doing. INEC should better be served this notice and quickly too. Suspend this absurdity going on. Allow what you said you will do to take hold of the process. Nobody's imposing anything on INEC at this stage. Your pronouncements, your practice direction, your guidance notes, your operationalized method is what people expect you to uphold to the letter.
The president is the commander-in-chief. You've talked about, body language and the presence of his candor. And whether we like it or not, a lot of people are also looking towards, the conversation that is not yet being had from the presidency
Absolutely.
on this issue. Could that also influence outcomes if he waits?
I will not speak for the president in this matter because very delicate matter. But what can I say is, the president is duly briefed by a team of lawyers. He had the Attorney General, who is his Minister of Justice, who will say, Mr. President, this is what the law says that INEC has to do. On the one hand. Two, this is what INEC says it will do. Okay, Mr. President, nobody imposed this on INEC. INEC accepted to do it. The key thing is to use that bully pulpit, to use back channels to let INEC do the needful. The president can't invoke his presidential power and say INEC suspend this, suspend that. No. That again will be running contrary to expectations of the law. But the president will be guided fully by legal implications of INEC's illegal conduct and says, go back and do what is legal. That is part of his charge as a president.
Is it the same president that you have just stated here that breached his own aspect of the legal process by displaying his vote?
I'm very careful.
That is one aspect, really. And this is the same INEC, that everyone praised after the elections in Oshu and Ekiti State, using the same system we are talking about and the same technology. So my question will be, what other options really are available for the masses should INEC goes ahead with this collation and then announces results at the end? And I'm asking this because INEC has said that the Electoral Act empowers it not to, to conclude the process, then can now review whatever issues that are raised.
Let's unpack some of the points you raised. One, presidential conduct is a conduct by human. I was measured when I talked about it, my criticism of the president. He would wave that card out of sense of elation. Oh, I voted for my party man, without any ulterior motive. But I've said he has signaled something to very potent institutional forces.
Legally is what I'm saying.
Yes,
according to Electoral Act, it's not supposed to be a secret
it is
aspect
wrong. I understand it's secret. It's wrong. I'm looking at the wider dimension of that act, beyond the wrongness of it, legally speaking. Because signal something much more dangerous. But the president can still pull back to say, I went too far. Maybe people acted based on what I did. It's my duty to rein them in now to say, do not go on this path. I have a legacy to maintain. He said, I need to leave this office with this legacy, at least one. Other ones have gone up in smoke. Security and so infrastructure, insecurity, currency, design, name it, education, and so on, crumbled. But this one, I want to hold on to it. If it explodes on his face, it will be far more consequential than even insecurity. So he needs to be guided properly, to guide INEC properly. Using back channels, the Attorney General and so on to say, this is the needful. That's one. Two, if you violate the process that you say they're going to adopt, there's no outcome. So it's not enough to say, let us finish the electoral collation, announce result, then it can litigate other matters thereof. No. You have to follow that process before you get to the outcome. If the outcome comes before the process, you have breached that process. That means that outcome is unacceptable, it's not transparent, it is not fair, it is not just. Finally, what is open to the people? It's not just the people. There are many more interested people. It's not for me to speak for any of the political parties. But the legal framework is broad enough, even this very minute, to hold that process. You're not talking about no of June 12 election that APC is screaming about. APC, whose language even in the past 2 days have been bellicose, incendiary in nature, and unbecoming of a party of that stature in terms of being a governing party. We're talking about stopping an illegal fraudulent collation process, holding it, And to avoid the people taking laws into their hands and then using self-help for actualization of whatever they believe have gone wrong, for redress and redemption, the judicial apparatus may need to weigh in very fast. And that has to be called to order, not just by the people, but by the judicial system. The parties know what to do. The law and the judicial apparatus are broad enough to accommodate. The governors of APC states went to Supreme Court. It didn't say the currency redesign should be wiped out and thrown away. We said, hold it until we come back to tell you why this currency redesign measure by the CBA shouldn't go forward. That's an ex parte order. I don't even know the reason why there was this ex parte order on this. There should be one. That will save the day. So the people will not riot in the streets. Millions will not die needlessly. So the judiciary must be attuned to what is going on, and the parties themselves must explore the judicial possibilities and prospects of adjudication.
You look at the fact that a lot of Nigerians, even citizens on the street, will say that perhaps it's even too late to look at INEC or absolving it at the fact that it is an institutional, its institutional mechanism is void of executive contamination. Because whether you like it or not, the INEC is an institution of government. And, the hierarchy is also decided by those in government.
Sure.
So the outcomes at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, behind closed doors or not, will be determined by government.
Okay.
And citizens are saying, in the void that the institutions are not listening, perhaps it's time for us to do it the citizens' way, where if what we are saying or what you're saying is not practiced or is not being, is not being implemented, it is now time for Nigerians to come out to the streets.
Okay, I hope.
What is the danger of that? Because whether you like it or not,
sure,
the anger is there.
Sure, of course, I get it. That is something we must avoid as patriots, as people who have given our all for this democracy. Look at my title, Founding Secretary Alliance for Democracy. That's 1998. We put up this infrastructure, this democratic governance. We protect it with our blood, the way we did in getting rid of the military. It is even late in the day for the debate about the kind of electoral management body we have. A lot of experts have talked about breaking INEC and bundling it into three. I've listened to experts. One, a separate agency dealing with voter registration, registration and updating until election day, which they can now push on to another agency that is going to conduct elections solely. And another agency is going to look at post-election issues. Mali has it, from what I learned from experts, 3 bodies. That's 40 million people, maybe less than 20 million voters. In the US, 370 million citizens. 50 separate independent electoral management bodies. Nigeria creeping to 250 million people, one single body, controlled by the executive branch, as you said, handling this thing with public expectation to deliver well. That's almost impossible. But that debate about the kind of agency, the kind of electoral management body is not something we can resolve now. We have a bad, messy situation. How do we get the best out of it? The best out of it is that the government of the day that appointed the INEC chairman and INEC commissioner must understand not only its legacy is up in the air and up for grabs. The future of democracy in this country and even the sustainability of the Nigerian state is up for grabs.
All right, Prof, before we go, really, the way the agents are now reacting to this issue at the National Collation Center, with some walking out, on the electoral body and the chairman, and then, which has led to even others calling for arrest and all of that due to what INEC chairman described as disruptions during the process. Do you think that's the best way to go?
The best way to do was exactly what they did. They cannot stay there and deodorize the INEC idiocy. They can't come there and pamper the INEC chairman and his very incompetent team and justify not only their incomprehensible sense of laziness, but maybe contamination by some forces out there. For them to do what they did is to let the world know that this process is a sham. It's incredible. It's not transparent. It is not fair. It is not just. It cannot stay there and say, sign something, let it go to court. What will the courts do? You must first of all arrest that process, odious process. And they did it by walking away and addressing the media in a very elegant manner. Those calling for arrest are the people who shoot themselves, bury their heads in shame. The kind of language you find from that sector, that section of the country, that section of the political establishment is almost most uncalled for, impetuous and completely reprehensible.
All right, thank you so much, Prof. I think that's where we will draw the curtain on this conversation. Very insightful, highly highlighted of the odds and the outcomes so far. We want to say thank you to Professor Udenta, who has been talking to us. He's the founding National Secretary of Alliance for Democracy and Distinguished Fellow of Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. And it will interest you that he was also in detention 6 times during the Abacha era, but has come out strong and continues to be a voice. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure
for being on
this morning.
Thank you. Have a great day. And that has been our time on the Nigeria Election Situation Room on Africa Independent Television, an elaborate program where we bring you detailed information regarding what has happened before the elections, what happened during the election, and we'll be following through up until the elections are finally resolved and all the issues resolved and probably